Welcome to the Doctor's Debrief podcast presented by NDMD Productions. Here in the Doctor's Debrief podcast, we're going to take a dive into some of the most impactful patient cases of a physician's career, the ones that are forever imprinted in their memories and have played a crucial part in shaping their identity as a physician. Although all of us have experience with facing and overcoming adversity, we seldom talk about the skills we use and the lessons we learn along the way. On Doctor's Debrief, I'm passionate about being transparent about these hardships and the methods we use to overcome them to encourage others to follow their dreams and learn from each step of their journey, regardless of their circumstances. I'm your host, Vivien McCool, a first-year medical student. You can find my YouTube channel in the description below.
And hi, it's me, not Vivien, obviously, but Andy, aka NDMD, aka fourth-year med student, aka this is really weird being kind of a guest host today on Doctor's Debrief. But today we have an episode that's been, I think, a few months in the making, and our guest today was very kind enough to visit us in the Augusta studio while traveling to different conferences, representing one of my biggest supporters on the channel, as well as the partner of today's episode, Amboss. Now, Amboss is 3-in-1 medical education, exam prep, and point of care clinical knowledge, all in one platform. It's been one of my, as well as Vivien's favorite resources.
Yeah, for me, it's been a way to quickly learn and test the intricate pathology learned in your pre-clerkship years of medical school.
And for me, it's been a way to have a quick, concise, and comprehensive resource for clinical knowledge as you progress from the books to the wards in your later years of medical school. Amboss is an absolute must for any medical student to have on their phone or on their computer, because without all the frills, you can look up exactly what you need when you need it so you can learn and apply in the clinical environment. For those who are interested in learning more about Amboss and trying it out, stay tuned because we will share more about how Amboss can help you succeed in medical school and residency later in the episode. But now it's time to introduce today's guests.
Yes. So, today's guest is a graduate from the University of Michigan Medical School who did his anesthesiology residency at Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center / Harvard Medical School before completing his pediatric anesthesia fellowship at Cincinnati Children's. From there, he spent nearly 9 years practicing as a pediatric anesthesiologist at Kaiser Permanente and NYU Langone Medical Center, the latter of which where he taught hundreds of med students, residents, and fellows over his tenure.
With his experience and passion for teaching and guiding medical students and residents through their own ups and downs that medical training so often entails, he now holds a position as the business development lead for U.S. clinicians at Amboss, working hard to make sure Amboss fits the exact needs of those in the clinical environment.
With that being said, welcome to the Doctor's Debrief podcast. Dr. Dalmia, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thanks for having me, and please call me Manoj.
Okay, Manoj. Thank you. Thank you for being here.
No, it's going to be fun.
Yeah. We're excited.
Really, thank you for coming down to Augusta. There are very few that dare brave that journey.
Yeah. Take the trek. No, thank you so much. So before we get into the thick of it, is there anything that we missed that might be of interest to the bright students watching or listening right now?
I don't think so. I think that was a pretty good introduction. You know, one thing that I always like to bring up are things that kind of like make me a little bit different than like other doctors that, you know, I think people think that doctors are doctors first and then humans second, but I'm very much a human. And, you know, one of my passions is wine, and I'm actually in a diploma in wines program right now where I've like finished 5 of the 6 units. So I love sharing that passion and just having a lot of other interests outside of medicine.
What's the best wine you've ever had?
The best wine that I've ever had was a Le Roulier 2016, which was made by a producer named Henri Bonneau, who's like the OG of Chateauneuf du Pape, Southern Rhone style of wine, like Grenache based. It's when my friend, who's a master somm, actually, he was asking me to be the godfather of his child. So he opened up that bottle for me as a special thank you before he asked. And I was like, I'm going to say yes anyway, but if you want to give me really good wine, I'm like totally good with that.
Absolutely. That's so cool to see. And like, I think you get extra letters next to your name, right? Like an MD?
Yep, W set, and it's definitely going to follow my my MD after I get it.
Love that.
Yeah.
So are you a believer in like pairing things with wine, like different cheeses or different like snacks?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I think that there's it's a thing. It really is a thing, but it takes time to get really good at it, and that's something I'm still learning.
Okay. I love food. I feel like you could eat anything with anything.
Yes.
Very, very, very true. Yeah.
So with your introduction and what we have heard about you already, we know that you're super passionate about academics and just medical academics in particular. But before getting to that, let's start at the beginning. What do you think brought you to medicine starting out initially?
Yeah, so there's no doctors on either sides of my family. There's actually nobody in healthcare. There's like no dentists, there's no nurses or anything on both sides of my family. So lots of engineers, a lot of business people. But it was something where I always had a really wide range of interests. I loved writing. I loved connecting with people. I loved helping people. And so, really, to be honest, medicine kind of almost seemed like a default in the sense that it encompassed a lot of the different things that I was really, really interested in. And, obviously my parents encouraged me. They were really happy when I did it. When I was applying, I applied initially actually to BSMD programs plus other undergraduate programs. And it was because my dad, who was an engineer, was just really, really passionate. He just loved his children. And he's the one who actually researched BSMD programs for me. And I applied to a bunch of places. And he was always very focused on, take a guarantee. Like my dad was like top of his engineering college at one of the top engineering schools in India. And I'd actually gotten accepted into MIT for his master's in mechanical engineering and the University of Hawaii, Manoa. And I always asked him, like, why would you take Hawaii over MIT? And he's like, MIT didn't guarantee me a graduate assistantship that would help pay for my master's. University of Hawaii did. He said he always believed that, no matter where you're at, you can make the most of it. And he said, and take the guarantee. You just don't know what's going to happen. And so I followed my dad's advice and was really, really, one big thing that I was talking to you guys about yesterday is that, how important mentorship is. And I had that starting with my own dad. From like a very young age. And so I trusted him. And I took a BSMD program. He's like, I know that you're smart enough to get into medical school without it, but just take the guarantee. And I was really grateful that I did. And I got into a program in Chicago, but I did eventually apply out. And that's how I ended up at the University of Michigan. I actually had my doubts about it. I wasn't sure if I wanted to even do medicine, but my dad said, you know what? Go do your degree in something. He initially told me to do it in like chemical engineering. And the first week of orientation, I met with my advisor and I was like, okay, I'm going to do this molecular biochemistry degree because I had to do certain degrees for my BSMD program. And I was like, I guess I'm just going to do medicine because there is no way I'm going to do engineering, chemical engineering. I am not fit for this. So that's how I got into medicine.
I love that. So a lot of it was just like your interest in it, you were kind of inspired to do it, and then you had your family's support, and they were like, take the sure route.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it was always just about my family just saying, if we're here to support you in whatever it is that you're willing to do, but if you want to do medicine, especially in Indian culture, like Asian culture in general, it's considered the highest
of course
honor.
Same with the Latin culture.
Yeah,
they're like, you want to be a doctor? Perfect.
Yeah, exactly. So there was a lot of very, very happy family members when that happened.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So do you think that those same inspirations and like support ultimately took you into academic medicine as well?
Well, no, I didn't really know what it is that I wanted to do. I mean, I started medical school thinking I was going to be a pediatrician, and totally shunning the idea of anything OR-based, surgery-based, or anything like that. Definitely not anesthesia, because I thought anesthesia was honestly a complete joke when I started medical school. And it was funny, when I actually got to my clinical year rotations, I loved the children, but I didn't love inpatient medicine. Well, I should say I didn't love the primary care aspect of medicine. Mm-hmm. It just wasn't. It was a little bit too slow moving for me. I'm kind of a doer. I want a result, and I feel like I really respect a lot of my primary care colleagues who are able to do this, but there's you have a lot less control, because when you're taking care of patients, a lot of it depends on, are they going to follow your recommendations or not? And then you could follow up with them and nothing has changed in their health because they didn't make those choices, or they didn't take the medications as required. This doesn't mean the people who misunderstand how to take their medications, but people who make choices not to.
Yeah.
So when I did surgery, I was like, oh, this is kind of awesome. And I was like, I'm actually like getting things done and I'm making changes and I'm immediately impacting the patient. So then I really, really thought about surgery. But I was like, did I really want that lifestyle personally? And I was fortunate that my really good friend who I grew up with was a second-year anesthesia resident at Michigan when I was a fourth-year medical student. And he's the one who recommended that I do anesthesia and try it out as a rotation. And he's like, I'll help lead you on the way. Again, mentor.
Yes.
And I totally fell in love with it when I understood like what exactly it entails. And he said the biggest thing for you to consider when you're taking anesthesia is, can you be okay knowing that you're making an incredible impact on your patients, but that many of the patients aren't going to be aware of the impact you're making?
Yeah.
And I said, you know what? I'm good with it. And I was fortunate that when I did my residency, I had incredible program director, incredible associate program director, just teaching faculty. I got to do my peds rotations at Boston Children's.
Nice.
So I got exposed to like the pinnacle of pediatric anesthesia, and I led that way. And I realized that because I had all these incredible mentors along the way, going back to your question about academic medicine, is that one of the things that I recognized was that I really did have a passion for teaching and mentoring and helping guide those just the way that others guided me. And I did with Kaiser. It was a little bit different. Kaiser wasn't very academic, but I wanted to try something different. And after, there was a lot of circumstances surrounding that, which we may get to, but ultimately I realized that my heart was in, being in a place where there was a lot of learners and I was actually impacting future generations of doctors. So that's what led me to NYU, one of the reasons.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And I remember you telling me this story. One, Michigan anesthesia program is one of the top programs in the entire country, not only in like educational training, but also culture. I've just heard so many good things about that place, as well as, of course, BI, everywhere else that you've been.
Yeah.
But also just your incredible story of like the BSMD programs. Again, if anyone listening or watching has been familiar with the channel for a while, they'll know that I was part of a BSMD program, but instead of applying out, I stayed all the way through. And I think like that fear of the unknown of applying out, because there was, I always tell people there's only one time when I considered applying out, and that was the second I got my MCAT score back. But but it was like at that moment, it's like, yeah, I don't know if this is worth it, because it is that fear of the unknown. And I think a lot of people in my program also shared that, as well as I think within Asian culture, like you said, it's safe to take the guarantee. And I think your story is just a testament of you can apply out and things will still be okay.
Everything will be okay.
And I think that's something super important for people to hear, especially people in those programs, because it is scary to have all these things guaranteed and for one decision to be like, all right, back into kind of the thick of it. You don't know.
Yeah.
But kind of wrapping back to anesthesia, see, we had the conversation too. I had an anesthesia rotation within my third year. Thoroughly enjoyed it. But as with all my interviews, gotta ask, were there any other specialties you were considering?
Yeah, I mean, very briefly, I thought about ENT, which, to be fair, ENT and anesthesia actually have a fair amount of overlap.
Yes.
Especially, I mean, my ENT colleagues were the ones that I probably worked with the closest. But, for me, the thing that really solidified anesthesia for me was the fact that I had the ability to do pediatric anesthesia if I wanted to, but I also really, really loved critical care medicine. And, the ICUs at Michigan are actually, the surgical ICUs are anesthesia run. Yep. And so you have this incredible synergy between anesthesia, surgery, the surgical teams. And it just made for this like very like comprehensive, cohesive patient care experience. I don't take it for granted how lucky I was. I mean, honestly, like every step of the way, I really had just some amazing training and amazing mentors and amazing opportunities. That's given me a lot that I'm very, very, very grateful for. But after that, I was pretty set on anesthesia, and honestly, I was very happy that I made that decision. It's served me very well over the years.
Yay, love to hear it.
Yeah.
Love to hear it. So your interview special because not only are you Manoj from Amboss, but your difficult patient encounters hit a little more close to home than anyone else I've had. Your experiences are about when your background in medicine forced you to wear multiple hats and grow as a person and physician in ways that you never expected to. You have some very personal stories of difficult encounters which have affected your private life, and I was lucky enough to hear some of it during our first Zoom call, and I think your story has the ability to impact so many more people than just the two of us. So if you don't mind wanting to get into it, we'd love to hear.
Yeah, not at all. I think what ends up happening a lot of times with people with students in medicine and physicians is it's really easy to get cynical and kind of lose sight of like the incredible opportunity that we actually have as physicians. And, for me, so I had graduated, I'm gonna totally date myself. So I graduated fellowship in 2012. And, I was really, really excited to be able to like give back to my family. Like my parents really, if I get a little emotional a little bit, just sorry about that. But my parents really like supported me like throughout my life. And I was really excited to finally become like a full-time attending and like be able to like give back to my parents the way that they had given me all like throughout my entire life. And we didn't like grow up rich or anything like that, but just really, really hardworking and with just a lot of like family focus. And so when I started in California, my dad had like health problems for years. He had his first heart attack when he was 39. He had a stroke when he was 51. And when he was 63 years old, his AICD went off multiple times. His ICD, I should say, went off multiple times. And then it kind of started this like 10-month spiral of him being in the hospital. And throughout that entire time, it was obviously a very scary experience for my entire family, my mom, my sister, my brother. But I was there. Yeah. And I was able to support them, to be able to like communicate with the doctors, to be able to simplify it into, normal human language, the way that people, like everyday people can understand. Mm-hmm. But I was doing this while I was in California. My dad was in Michigan. So there was times where I was on call and I was getting a call from my mom because they were coding my dad. And I'm literally on the phone with the ICU doctor and I'm hearing all of the hecticness in the background. And I am like, why am I here? Like, sorry.
No, that's a lot. Yeah.
But I needed to be there for my family. And I was really, really fortunate that I was able to understand everything that was going on. And I would make it a point to only fly there when I felt like it was absolutely necessary. And there'd be times where I'd have vacation and my mom would say, Manoj, I need you to come home, like, so you can go to the hospital and I can give a break. And I said, absolutely not. I'm going to go on vacation. And my mom at the time was so angry at me because she was like, why? Yeah. Like, don't you want to like help me, like give me a break? And I said, listen, like you need me to be at my best so I can handle all of the other stuff that's happening. Yeah. Like I have to give myself time for my own mental health to be able to do everything else that I do.
No, I'm sure that wasn't easy either to have to make that.
No, and I mean, but it's so important, and I feel that a lot of people in medicine lose sight of that, mm-hmm. like that there's this idea that no, like this is our job, our responsibility. We can't if we look out for ourselves or being selfish, you know what? I'm all about that. I think that that being selfish can sometimes be the most selfless thing that you can do. Because if you're running at 50% 7 days a week, you're not really doing anybody any favors at all. Yeah. Versus taking that day off so that you can be 100% the other 6 days. And I am a super strong believer of that. I tell so many of my friends that every day in life. And it's about, really giving yourself personal time, like for you. And so while this was happening, I did it, and I was able to be there for my family at every crucial moment that I needed to be. Even instances of where I'm pretty sure my dad would have passed away had it not been for me to stopping certain things that were going to happen. Because, the fact is that our medical system's like totally overwhelmed. There's lots of clinicians out there that just don't have the support or resources to know what it is that they're going to do, like they're supposed to do in very complex situations. And so my dad was initially in a community hospital, and community hospitals are great in so many ways, but there's, again, like lots of times it's hard to take care of very complex patients. Unfortunately, we were able to get my dad to the University of Michigan, where they were able to help him. But the long and short of it is that I was really grateful to be able to be there for my family, to up till the very end. Like I withdrew care from my dad. So the critical care doc told my mom that there's no hope. And I remember actually getting into an argument with my mom being like, you're being selfish. Like there's nothing for him to do. Like he's not going to get better. He was in like multi-system organ failure at this point. And my mom's like, what do you expect me to do? Like, you want me to like say, go ahead and like let my husband die? And I was like, well, do you trust me to do it? She said, yeah. And I know it was the right thing to do. But even 11 years later, it was tough. But I made sure that, I was just there, and I was strong for my family, but I gave my moments where I needed to give like my own personal time for it, which I did. And you know what? And I realized that, I think about all those years of medicine, all the hard work up to that point, and I would not give it back for the world. I don't care about how like bad a place could be to work, how difficult it can be. And we've all had our challenges, but to be able to be there like I did for my family, what a privilege. Like what an incredibly, like an incredible opportunity. And I would do it 100 times over just because of that. So, I know it's so hard being in medicine, and it's so easy to lose sight because of like how difficult things can be. But to know that I could be there for the people I love the most and help guide them through some of the most difficult times, like it was awesome.
Wow. No, thank you for sharing that. It's a heavy story, and I like admire your perseverance of being able to have to make those calls and make those tough decisions and still be like, I'm grateful that I was able to. Yeah. Because I feel like so many people in that position would be like, this is a curse. Like, I wish that I was just a normal person right now, not having to make these calls. But instead you were like, I'm grateful that I was able to be there for my mom and be there for my family and explain what was going on and ultimately make the call that was the right call, but like the most difficult call.
Yeah, I mean, I really believe, like I said, I kind of believe that things happen for a reason, and I think that there's like like anesthesia is like very much like a critical care field.
Yeah,
like we invented critical care, and so irrespective of me being a pediatric anesthesiologist, I'm an anesthesiologist, and I'm a critical care doctor, and the skills that I had were just absolutely perfect for this situation, and being able to communicate with the physicians, they're like, okay, you get this. Things really worked out the way that I really believe things were meant to work out. So yeah.
I love that.
And I just have a quick question too.
Sure.
I think like even I always joke around with my parents, my brother who's also in the BSND program, and even my own parents have jokingly and half jokingly told me this before, where it's like, no matter how many degrees you have, after your name, you're still going to be my son.
Correct.
And still going to be family. And in some ways that has brought up challenges where, we have all this training, we have all this education, but, this deep ingrained culture of family sometimes like supersedes that. And I was just thinking of like my own family. I'm also going to be the first physician on my side. And how
I know we have so many overlaps.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because you mentioned like how challenging it was to get that knowledge across to, your mom in these situations where it's like, how did you get that through to your parents where it's like, please just trust me. I know these are difficult decisions, but like, I've been through all these years of training. You have to trust me.
Fortunately, I didn't really have to do much pushing. I mean, once I asked my mom permission, like, I'm like, do you want me to make these choices? And my mom pretty much said yes. She's like, I trust you. I trust that you're doing what is best. And I needed my mom. The only way I would have been able to go through with it was with my mom trusting me to do it and not having any hesitation about it, because if she had hesitation, then I would have hesitated. But that's kind of the fortune that I had to have parents that really just unequivocally believed in me. Because, it's one of those things I think this is a little bit off topic, but I think a lot of like medical students go into medicine with imposter syndrome, right? Mm-hmm. And I remember when I was a first year medical student, I did my first quiz and I got like an 85%, and I thought, oh, that's pretty good. But the class average was like a 96. And I remember panicking and calling my parents and being like, I shouldn't be here. And they're like, well, actually, like, work hard for a second, for a change. Stop like trying to just kind of skim by. And then once I applied myself, you realize. And, I think that I realized that I made it there. Everything has happened in my life because it was meant to happen. And that there wasn't a mistake, that I didn't fool everybody, multiple people to get to where I got to. I got here because I earned it. And I think that's important to keep in mind.
And I mean, I can even say this from my direct experience, going through boards and studying, being like in my room, not leaving like 12 hours a day for 3 months straight. I've had those same phone calls. I've had those same conversations with my parents. And it's such a tough time because I know for a fact they want so badly to help. They want so badly to understand, but they know they haven't gone through med school. They haven't gone through this training. And I think selfishly for me, I have this wall of like, you guys don't fully understand. Like, how can you tell me just to work harder?
Yeah, my dad does the same thing. He's like, I believe if you apply yourself, you can do anything. And I'm like, you don't get it. You've never been.
Yeah, it's a tough
It is, but it's so important to have people say that to you.
Yeah.
Right?
Their belief in you makes all the difference.
Yeah, I mean, because the thing is, you're saying you don't understand, but maybe they understand. They understand. Yeah. They perfectly understand, and you don't understand. And that's again where like that doubt creeps in. For me, I got to a point of where I just trusted my parents. Like when they said something, I always saw that ultimately they always ended up being right.
You know what? You're right. You're right. I'm going to call him out.
And I realized that I just need to like sometimes shut up, listen, and just trust. And again, like that's why I said, like you got here for a reason. Things are difficult, but it's just one of many challenges. And let me tell you this, like once you start, like I don't want people to have to go through like a traumatic experience like I did with like losing my dad for me to like put things into perspective. The fact of the matter is that we're here for a reason. Things are happening, and the things that we're learning and the opportunities that we get truly are a privilege and an honor. Like we're having patients put themselves in the most vulnerable state, like sharing their most personal details with us.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
You're right.
And we're here for a reason because all these other doctors, all these people, these admissions people that have seen thousands of students over the years, thousands of physicians, things of that nature, they saw qualities in each of you that told them, yeah, we want them to be a part of this, siblinghood of medicine. So.
Very much so. And I don't know. Obviously, all of us coming from very family-oriented backgrounds, it's just this hits way harder, way closer to home than I ever expected.
Yeah.
And I really do appreciate it, Mom and
That's
Dad. I know for a fact, Mom, at the very least, you're listening and watching.
Oh.
Love you guys. So I'm very sorry for a lot of the frustration and things through boards period, because it's very much parallel to what you're saying.
You did a nice job, parents.
Thank you, Manoj. Okay, this is a little bit heavy hitting, so let's take a quick break to recalibrate, and we'll see you in a second. So before you continue, let's just kind of lighten up the mood with a quick word of thanks to this episode's partner, Amboss. And if you've been around the channel for a while, you shouldn't be any stranger to Amboss, but I cannot say this enough, that the Amboss library, the Knowledge app, and their Step 1/Step 2/their shelf Q banks truly set themselves apart from any other resource out there and have saved me thousands of times in my pre-clerkship and clerkship years. When I tell any student or any other med students about Amboss, and in fact, I'm pretty sure this is like what I exactly told you, Vivien, the first phrase that usually comes out of my mouth is that it is a cleaner, more organized, up-to-date, that gives you exactly what you need when you need it, so you can build upon your knowledge in the clinical environment in real time. And I kind of embarrassing, I cannot count the amount of times that I would be quickly looking up diagnostic algorithms, examples of pathologic imaging, or even little pathophysiologic pearls that I knew my attending was going to quiz me on, all from the convenience of my laptop or even Knowledge app on my phone. Dare I admit, some of those Amboss searches I've done were a little too close to when we were supposed to start rounds, but I think that's even more a testament to just how easy it is to navigate the evidence-based information that's just a search bar away.
Yeah, and when it comes to my pre-clerkship presentations during our case-based learning sessions, there are two things I cannot resist using: memes and Amboss. Recently, I created a high-yield presentation on hypercoagulable states, and on Amboss, I learned all about Trousseau syndrome and polycythemia vera. And my classmates always give these presentations before a quiz to make sure they have all the info they need to ace it, and also learn for the betterment of their future patients in the process. And if you're an Anki user like me, you're going to love the Amboss add-on that gives you quick pearls during your reviews from highlighted terms within each card that will help you learn what in the world dysdiadokinesia is without ever having to click away from the card you just freshly unsuspended.
As Amboss has grown as one of my and Vivien's, for sure, most recommended resources for medical students, it is quickly expanding its prevalence in the clinical setting by empowering medical students and even residents now with drug dosages and acute management checklists, two features I am sure I will be using very, very soon. But for now, I can say without a doubt that Amboss has been a huge part of the way I built up and apply medical knowledge, and you can too. So visit the link in the description to get 10% off your first Amboss plan, or visit amboss.com to learn more about this incredible tool to grow at every step of your medical training. Thank you, Amboss, for supporting this episode and this channel.
Okay, guys, welcome back. Thank you so much for sharing these stories, Manoj. It was so touching, and I think that the viewers would really learn a lot from your experiences. I always appreciate the vulnerability. Thank you.
So this is what I'm saying, right? So it's like doctors are humans. Right?
That's the main
We're
message.
humans. Yeah. We're humans first.
For sure.
And I think that there's a lot of times where people feel that they feel like they have to be a certain way, but no. I mean, like the way that I am with you guys is the way that I've been with all of my patients. And, you know, I had mentors along the way, teachers along the way that at first were like, wait, you're too casual. Like this isn't right. Almost. Mm-hmm. But then what they saw was that, well, the most important thing is being able to connect with your patients. And there's too many times where I feel like there's this like doctor-patient hierarchy, but it's like, no, it's just a human talking to a human. And if anything, I'm so grateful that you're trusting me with this. So my role should be to provide comfort and to provide understanding and to meet them at their level. And I think it served me really well. So, I mean, I try not to be super immature when I have my pediatric patients, but sometimes
you gotta match their level.
Yeah. You gotta have fun. Sometimes you gotta play hide and seek with them, and the nurses look at you like you're a weirdo. But
learn your Paw Patrol references. Just
exactly.
Speak to them as them. But I think it's a great point, especially in medical school. You so often hear the term professionalism thrown around, and oftentimes it's kind of weaponized towards students. But at the end of the day, I think looking at it as a human-to-human interaction versus like a patient to physician interaction sometimes is what the patient needs the most.
Right.
Yeah, because being a goof doesn't mean you're not professional.
Correct.
It just means you're a little goof. Nothing wrong with that. So do you think your experience with your family and your dad shaped the way you interacted with your patients going forward, just shaped the way you were a physician at all going forward?
Like I told you, like when I at the beginning where I said, there was a lot of different interests that I had. I mean, I did a lot of theater. My parents were terrified that I was going to become a theater major. They're like, how are you going to support yourself? I ended up doing 23 shows in high school, college, and medical school, actually, including the Festival Fringe in Edinburgh, Scotland, which was really cool.
Are these recorded?
As a high school? They're probably somewhere, yeah.
It's like burn them.
No. I mean, it was great. I mean, it was a lot of fun. I did a lot of different things, but I think for me, it was always about, I felt like I was always a healer. And for me, it was always about wanting to build relationships and connect with people and think about how can I support others, because I always got that kind of support. And I felt like medicine was a very natural kind of transition to that. And, whenever I took care of a patient, I always thought about them as if they were a family member. And I know that sounds cheesy, but I always was just I always wanted to treat them with the utmost respect. Sometimes they're difficult, and just if I have, if I'm a parent, and sometimes you have your kid or whatever, sometimes they need a little scolding. So sometimes patients need a little scolding. So to be hey, this is not what we need to talk about this. This is not right. But I always viewed everything from human to human interaction, and I thought that made me really, really good at what I did. And, and I don't practice clinically anymore. But, I feel so fortunate being at Amboss with all the opportunities that they've really, really provided me. That I actually feel in a lot of ways I can still continue to be myself in a lot of ways and still contribute to you guys. So
thank you. And
awesome.
I think that's a really good transition to kind of our next question along this reflection track of everything that you've been through. A lot of people in the platform have stepped away from clinical medicine either for personal reasons or they're just kind of on the tail end of their career. We've had Dr. Kevin Jabal come on my other podcast, Beyond the Scope. We had a long conversation about that. And, obviously now you're in a position with Amboss, working kind of in the realm of medicine, but no longer clinically.
Yep.
But as we've touched on a ton throughout this podcast, the experiences that you have as a physician are much more human ones than clinical. So how are kind of the human lessons that you've learned along the way, impacting the way that you approach your job at Amboss and will continue to approach any roles that you fulfill non-clinically?
Yeah. So I think, just kind of getting a little bit about background about how the whole Amboss thing even happened was, I actually had injured my shoulder. So I injured my shoulder in January of 2020, actually, in a mountain biking accident in Bolivia.
Oh.
And
that sounds like a story.
Yeah, it was a story. It's a story for another day. But I was actually transitioning. This was just before COVID hit New York. And then I actually got transitioned and I headed the ICU bench team I was working as an intensivist during the peak of COVID in New York, which was totally crazy.
Wow. Yeah, gnarly.
And so it was a really, really intense, that first month and a half was really, really intense. And, ultimately what ended up happening was my shoulder was so injured that I wouldn't have been able to safely perform anesthesia. So I was I kind of temporarily worked and then transitioned out of it. And I thought about what is it that I want to do? And and what I recognized was that, I have this opportunity. Like it's like you can look at this injury and say, oh my gosh, if you identify yourself only as a doctor, if that's like your entire identity, it's terrifying, right? Mm-hmm. But I had all these other people that, again, mentors, believers, family members that said, no, it's like, there's a lot of things you can do. Like you're you. Oh. And over those months, I was like, if I'm going to take a job, I really want to take a job that I felt is still going to be able to impact, create a great impact in medicine. And I'll tell you, like when I was an anesthesiologist, one thing, every individual patient I took care of was such an honor. And I was so grateful for the opportunity, but I also thought, how is this scalable? Mm-hmm. Like if I do this for 30 years, I may end up taking care of like say 30,000 patients, and I've made a difference in 30,000 patients' lives, which is a huge number. So I don't take that for granted, but I still felt like I could do more. And so for me, when I was looking at job opportunities, my job opportunities were very much centered on how can I continue to create impact. And to be totally honest, I hadn't even heard of Amboss before early 2022. And it was because my friend, who was one of my anesthesia attendings when I was a resident, who transitioned out of clinical medicine, and she was working non-clinically in medical education as well. And she's the one who found the job posting for Amboss, which said it's looking for a physician who likes to like teach people, communicate with people, network, and wants to make an impact on physicians. So I said, okay, I'll apply.
Mm-hmm. Sounds like you.
Yeah, and it worked out great. And when I was doing my research on it, one of the biggest things was I think looking at like value statements are really, really important. And Amboss, like one of the biggest things, like one of their 3 core values is that they're hungry for impact. Mm-hmm. And I was like, that's exactly what I've been looking for. Mm-hmm. And, they have, and then they had another value, which is they value substance over style. And so it's like, you don't need to be a certain way, act a certain way. They just want you to be you, mm-hmm. and like to bring your personal experiences and your personality into everything. And and then their third pillar is, that we're generous people and team players. And so I'm just like, this like totally vibes with me.
Love
like
that.
I'm like, but is this company really like that?
Right.
And it totally is. And it really, really starts with the founders, who they're just so passionate about making this huge impact on future physicians and on current physicians. And, when you have that kind of leadership who's like very, really transparent, and where like everything, they're obsessed with what can we do to truly make physicians' lives easier? How can we create a platform that's going to allow them, every platform says we improve patient care, which is which is a huge, important aspect of it. It is. Mm-hmm. But there also is this other section, which is like, how can we make future doctors and current doctors' lives easier? How can we streamline things? How can we ensure that they're providing this gold standard of care, but efficiently, mm-hmm. so they can actually go and like hang out with their family? I think that there's like, I think it's, people talk a lot about like, oh, spend more time with your patients. We love our patients, but our patients don't probably want to spend 1 million hours with us either, right? And mm-hmm. they want to just make sure that they can trust their doctor, that they're getting the care that they need, and they want to be able to go back to their family and friends just like we want to. Right. And I think because we have this overriding idea with our company, that every single person that's a part of it really truly feels they're making an impact, not just on patients, but on the doctors themselves. And when you have that being kind of the core foundation of a company and what they're trying to create, it makes for a really, really great environment in which to work in and to be able to support you guys. So I think that we, I feel like we have this really group of like super passionate doctors. Like our entire like editorial team is primarily made up of like US trained physicians who, are brilliant, and they have lots of skills and they could have done a lot of different things, but they made a choice that they wanted to work for Amboss because they were hungry for impact and about how can we impact instead of thousands, millions.
Yeah.
And we like this, everyone is just so passionate about creating something. Like we didn't have this, right? You guys are so lucky.
Yeah.
Like we didn't have any kind of resource like this, which is like a singular thing where we can just find pretty much everything that we wanted.
Yeah.
And we're obsessed with like really creating this like platform in which can support you throughout everything. And we want to give you guys what we didn't have, you know? And yeah, and I'm glad to hear that you guys love it. I mean, I've been really, really impressed with it. And to your question, sorry, I went a little bit off topic, but to your question about like, how do you feel like it impacts you? It's like when I go to conferences, you know, I'm able to speak to physicians as a physician and it actually builds trust, right? Because I'm joining this medical education company because I really truly believe in its mission. There's a lot of things where, good for anybody else who goes into other fields and utilizes their MD. But for me, I wanted to be able to stay as tight as I could to the actual physician, patient side. And I think those skills were ideal. So.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
Alrighty. So we're getting close to the end. Yeah, we're gonna send the viewers and listeners out on some encouragement.
Sure.
First question being, you have your own personal story in what went on your family while you were attending, and I know for a fact there's going to be other students, residents, attendings that are probably facing a similar situation. So what is some encouragement to those people with how to navigate this and, just really how to move forward and get through that situation in the best way possible?
Sure. So always seek support. I mean, that's so key. I think that sometimes people they can feel like that, that these kinds of like experiences shouldn't impact them or they keep it within themselves. And I think that I've always readily shared with people because I know that I need that. I need that encouragement. I needed that support, those words of encouragement. I think that everybody is everyone who goes into medicine, I think is really special. I think that there's a lot of honor associated with it. And that there's a privilege and we need to keep sight of like what we're learning is so important. But also again, to repeat, we're human. We're human. You have to give yourself time. You have to you really, really do need to give yourself the ability to take a break. Like grades, all these things, honestly, in the big scheme of things don't matter. They really, really don't matter. And, it's like, it always kills me when you hear about, a medical student taking their life or, during COVID, there was so much stuff in terms of mental health. And a lot of it just starts with really, truly giving yourselves permission to care for yourself and not just for everybody else. And everyone can do it. You honestly all have the ability to do it. And always just remember, you're a human first. Everything else really comes second.
RT. Love that. So before we do take off, what is some moving advice and parting words for the current or prospective medical student or maybe even future pediatric anesthesiologist out there?
If you decided to do medicine, just do it. Drown out all the noise, drown out all the Reddit threads, everything else where people say you're dumb if you go into medicine. The fact of the matter is, if it feels right to you and you want to do it, do it. And if it doesn't feel right to you, that's also okay. Give yourself permission to say, you don't have to fall under the pressures and expectations of whatever other people tell you you should or you shouldn't be. But my point is just follow your heart. Follow your heart. If you're truly passionate about it, you're going to be able to create an impact, which is what's the most important thing. There's too many times where people go into things that they're not passionate about and they limit their impact as a result. I think that whatever it is that you want, you can do it, try your hardest. And even if medicine doesn't, if becoming a physician doesn't work out, there's so many incredible ways to make an impact on other people's lives that are just as honorable as being a physician. And it isn't the be all end all. Like, I have friends in all different healthcare specialties. I have, even with like my company, like, from the people who who make the food, the people who are the engineers, the people who are like the product managers, the people who are, help organize just like the marketing. There's so many people who are making an incredible amount of impact on other human beings, even though they're not in the healthcare field. And I think that is so awesome. Like, there's so many ways to create impact in anything that you decide to do that, just follow your heart. Like, I really, really, really believe like that's the key to being happy.
Love that. Couldn't agree more, honestly. Okay, Manoj, thank you so much for sharing your experience with us. I appreciate the vulnerability and just the humanness of it all. I love the message, everything happens for a reason. Be human. Don't doubt yourself. Mentorship,
huge.
Such major points here that I think a lot of people can benefit from. So thank you for your time and honesty and willingness to share that, all the things that healthcare professionals have to overcome. I appreciate it. And with that,
see you next time.
I guess it's a wrap.
Thanks, guys.